Hi, this is Jay Stern, and for the Week 10 last and final assignment for the capacity building class, I'd like to run through my individual capacity assessment. By way of agenda, we'll talk first about process, second about the summary of the assessment, and then last we'll go into the area that I'd like to focus on. So by way of process, there's a couple of things that I've used as background just over my professional, even my volunteer career, as it relates to some of the personality assessments, such as Myers-Briggs. I've done a couple of them, one through a company called Personalysis, one called Keirsey. I just did that recently for the Pancreatic Cancer Action Network. And then I've been really a big fan of Jim Collins and his work over the years. So I looked at some of Jim Collins's work in diagnostic leadership tools. And then really the kind of the basis for the summary is from the Forces for Good diagnostic tool. And that's kind of what I'll focus on here in terms of the assessment with strengths and limitations, focusing on the Forces for Good tool. Some of the things that I think, at least in my volunteer career anyway, that I've had good enjoyment in, and I think some success, is really in the area of advocacy in terms of both at the federal level and at the state level. Also being able to develop and foster very good partnerships that create kind of win-win scenarios. And then with some of the organizations I've been involved with, it's kind of been my role, and I enjoy actually helping to inspire evangelists to carry on the message and the cause. Some of the areas I think I'd like to work on are nurturing and building some of the non-for-profit networks with other organizations. In terms of the art of adaptation, focusing more on outcomes versus outputs, and then being a little more participative in sharing the leadership. So I think I used that as sort of the basis, and then looked at not only my volunteer work, but also my professional work combined to use tools such as Strength Finders. And I have actually used that tool in the past from a professional perspective, and the 5 strengths are the ones listed here: strategic, focus, achiever, arranger, and responsibility. They kind of blend that with some of the work in nonprofit. I think it sets up the stage in terms of where I'd like to kind of focus. I mentioned Jim Collins, and I'm a big fan of his. Read the book Good to Great a couple of times. One piece in his work that I really, really like is called the hedgehog concept. And Jim Collins applied it first to companies, but I think there's really an analogy to apply it to individuals and personal development as well. But so the hedgehog concept goes is you find the intersection on what you are deeply passionate about, where's your passion, what you can be the best in the world at, and then what drives your economic engine. In the case of a non-for-profit, it might be cash flow. In the case of a for-profit, it might be profitability. Individually, it might tie back to what is it that you really are good at and can gain satisfaction in. So that's sort of set up the concept for where I'd like to focus on the development side, and that is really in the area of executive leadership. Again, Jim Collins has what he calls or has published this concept on level 5 leadership, and as you can see here, it goes from level 1 to level 5. I probably am in the level 4 area now, and I'd like to continue to hone background, experiences, and skills in becoming an effective leader, and then in time to move that up to a level 5. I think a couple things that I've called out are that I would like to continue in leading some nonprofits that I have interest in. At some point in my life and career, I'd like to maybe sit on a board or two. And I think in order to do that, I've really got to hone some skills, particularly in the finance area and the operations area. So some of the things that I'm starting to do now, I'm going to join the Oklahoma Center for Nonprofits to really gain access to folks that have expertise on the non-for-profit side in the finance and operations area. In addition to expanding just my network, just recently reached out through friends of friends with a vice president with the United Way here in central Oklahoma. And then I think the other thing that I've kind of gone back to from time to time is some of the course material for the nonprofit board and governance class. So those are some of the things that I'd like to focus on. I think this was a good exercise to focus on individual capacity and leadership development for me, and I'm looking forward to it. So thanks again, and this has been a great class, and we'll touch base with everybody soon.